both has the anode and cathode.
How can solid state address it, or maybe what can it not address?
In the past 50 years, and there are lots of improvements. One of the most important issues, scientific challenges of the solid state battery.
What will be the price point of that? How competitive will it be?
Battery's performance, read performance.
What's happening in this space right now? Before we get started with today's episode of this Battery Insiders podcast, I want to let you know that we have another Battery MBA cohort starting in January. You can still apply for till the 18th of December. Hopefully see many of you there. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Battery Insiders podcast here live from the Future Battery Forum in Berlin. And very excited today to have a discussion about solid state batteries. And I have with me today Dr. Chi Do, who is the co-founder and CEO of Hytzer. And very excited to have you here. And we want to talk about the latest state of the art in solid state and get a bit of an overview also kind of what's happening in this space right now. So maybe to start, to kind of go right to it, kind of if you could start by giving us a bit of an overview of the current landscape of solid state batteries and how this industry is evolving.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you for the Battery Associates to having me here to join this podcast. And for the solid state battery, basically, this is not something new. Since the 1970s, and there is already polymer-based solid state battery reported from scientific journals. And in the past 50 years, and there are lots of improvements. And regarding the inorganic solid state battery technology route, basically it also started more than 30 years ago, and it started from Toyota. And in the late 90s, they started the research in the field of oxide and sulfide electrolyte. Until today, especially in the past couple of years, and given the energy transition megatrend, and the people are looking for more and more different energy storage solutions. And the solid state battery, because it has this advantage in the energy density as well as the safety profile, and they attract lots of attention. And for example, in US and in Europe, there are lots of startups from the spin-off of the research institution, and from, let's say, in China, and there are lots of big players in the recent years started to make the semi-solid state batteries.
Great. And maybe you could share a bit more about now what's the difference, right? Because if you have liquid-based lithium-ion batteries and then solid-state batteries, so if you maybe can walk us a bit through like what's the difference and maybe some of the similarities as well for these kind of different technologies from the structure, functionality, mechanisms, etc.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Basically, the function of the solid-state battery and the liquid lithium-ion battery is the same, and both has the anode and the cathode. And the electrolyte basically function as a carrier of the lithium ions to realize the charging discharging. Yeah. The main distinction between these two is that for the solid state battery, because it's a material innovation, it could achieve potentially very high energy density because you can design molecular structures and also make it to withstand much broad electrochemical windows, and so that you can have more active electrodes. And also from the safety perspective, and because you are using the non-proton electrolyte, it could eliminate the root cause of the fire hazards of the liquid electrolytes. Yeah, basically, this is the main difference. Therefore, people regard solid-state battery as the next generation of battery technology because it can achieve much higher energy density and plus more or less safe.
Yeah, and also kind of to distinguish, right? Because I think you mentioned semi-solid state before as well.
Yeah.
So there are some hybrids because often people only talk about liquid, right?
Yes.
And then they talk about solid, but there's actually also things in between.
Yes.
Maybe you could share a bit more about this, like.
Well, basically, this comes to, let's say, the scientific challenges of the solid-state battery. As I mentioned previously, from, let's say, early 70s, and people has already started to work on the solid-state battery. But why until today, and there is only not too many, I would say only one, based on the polyether oxide material, which realized commercial, let's say, application. Yeah. And the challenge is that in the solid-state battery, the lithium ions transport through the three solid phase. It's cathode, anode, and the electrolyte. Especially, there are another additional two solid-solid interface. So in the solid interface, and there are lots of problems. Yeah, because there are mainly, let's say, four type of battery failures in the solid-state battery. For example, like space charge separation and element interfusion, as well as interface reaction and plus the electrochemical mechanical deformation. Yeah. Just take one example, the last one. The mechanical deformation is pretty similar to the thermal expansion of the solid. When the temperature changes, its volume also changes. But in the battery, when the cycling starts, the volume of the electrolyte also changes. And this leads to lots of voids, cracks between the electrode surface and the electrolyte surface. And these voids will lead to the growth of dendrite. And in order to mitigate this problem, people are adding different materials. For example, in the early days, people add the nanoparticles, and for the hybrid or semi-solid state batteries, they are adding some liquid electrolytes. And in order to mitigate this issue, this is how and where the semi-solid state battery or hybrid solid state battery come from.
Amazing. And then also to understand a bit about, because you already touched on this, right? Also, I think the topic of safety, right?
Yes.
Kind of between these different technologies. And again, if you could share a bit more about, like, how can solid state address it, or maybe what can it not address of the safety? Maybe you can share a bit more about the opportunities in that regard.
My pleasure, yeah. Basically, regarding the safety, I think this is, if this is not the only one most important, but it must be one of the most important issue regarding to underpin the energy transition, because the battery itself is electrochemical reactions. It happens always, and it carries energy. But when we use it in our daily life, and I think more and more, let's say, fire hazards people see in nowadays. And let's look at the intrinsic root cause of the thermal runaway, like the explosion of the liquid electrolyte. What happened there? Basically, from the very first cycling of the liquid lithium-ion battery, and in the anode, the lithium atoms will release one of the electrons, became lithium-ion, and then when it's charged, and then the lithium ions get the electrons, became lithium atom. Lithium atom is very, very active. It reacts with the liquid electrolyte to form the lithium hydride. And this lithium hydride, the hydrogen is very active. It's -1 valence. It reacts nearly everything containing hydrogen to containing proton to form the hydrogen. You can consider it as kind of a hydrogen reservoir. Yeah. And also in the battery industry, people know that it will, when our battery start to work, before it work, it forms and deforms the SEI layers, interface layers. And this layer basically is the decomposition and also the formation of the lithium salts. And our liquid electrolyte, organic liquid electrolyte, and will decompose. It will decompose into carbon monoxide, methane, ethylene, acetylene. And all these are explosive substances. And therefore, when our battery gets self-heated to a certain temperature, normally around 200 Celsius degree, the cathode material starts to release oxygen. Look what we have in our system. We have hydrogen, we have carbon monoxide, we have methane, ethylene, and acetylene, plus oxygen and high temperature. And let's say, behind the stage, the thermal runaway, the fire hazards of the battery, that is explosive reaction. Yeah, this is what makes the liquid lithium-ion battery dangerous. Yeah. For the solid-state battery, the advantage is that, for example, if we use inorganic one, like oxide or sulfide, it does not contain hydrogen. Therefore, the very first step to formation of the lithium hydride, basically it is eliminated. In the polymer-based electrolyte, because the interface is solid and solid, this kind of side reaction happens very slow. We can also design the polymer electrolyte with containing less or even, let's say, non-proton. Of course, this is kind of a target in the future. Yeah. By this way, you improve the intrinsic safety of the battery.
Very good. And of course, on the other hand, though, I think one thing, it's still very energy dense, right? Like a battery. Yes. So I think, yeah, there's still energy in there, right? Which can be released. But I think, as you said, it's an interesting approach on the safety. Another topic which I think a lot of people think about is cost, right? I think especially for, all kinds of applications. Again, like, having seen this drastic cost reduction for lithium-ion batteries or liquid-based lithium-ion batteries really has enabled it for many applications, right? Yes. And I think now the question has been with solid state also, what will be the price point of that? How competitive will it be? Will it become cheaper? Will it be more expensive, niche, more might adopt it? Maybe you could share a bit more about this, some of your assumptions in that regard.
Yeah, basically from the cost perspective, and we can, let's say, mainly two cost drivers. First is from material itself. Second one is from the operation and manufacturing process. And if we look at this, also depends on the solid-state battery technology routes. For example, like the oxide and the sulfide one, and this kind of material. And normally, for example, like take one example, like the oxide one, it requires normally high temperature in order to form this kind of ceramic inorganic structure. It's a very energy consumption, condensed one. For the sulfide one, it's very sensitive to the oxygen and moisture. You need a clean room. But for both the technology route, there is no supply chain, let's say, built up yet. And all the manufacturing facility equipments need to be rebuilt. This will be very capital intensive. Yeah, but for the polymer one, it has the advantage of in terms of the raw materials, because it's organic one. There's no, let's say, rare metal or less expensive materials. Pretty similar would be like in the liquid lithium-ion battery, because for the liquid electrolyte in the past 30 years, since its commercialization, the cost of the liquid lithium-ion battery electrolyte has dropped 97%. Yeah, could you imagine 97%? Thanks to the economy of scale. Therefore, for the polymer ones, it does not have this kind of raw material as concerns. I believe that later on, when the scale built up, and then the cost would be, let's say, dropped sharply, pretty much like the liquid electrolyte in the past. And in terms of the manufacturing of a process, the polymer, because it's soft, and therefore is largely compatible with the conventional liquid lithium-ion battery. Therefore, we don't need to rebuild the overall supply chain. For example, in our technology, and 80% of manufacturing process is compatible. It's the same with the conventional liquid one. And we only have, let's say, around 20%, which we apply the special step to make the polymer electrolyte.
Maybe you could share about these 20%. So what are the differences between another process?
This is, for example, in the liquid electrolyte, and they fill in the liquid electrolytes. But in our technology, is the in situ polymerization. What we inject there, that is precursor of the polymer. In other words, that precursor plus these additives and also the lithium complex salts and this kind of eutectic liquid. Yeah, we inject this one, and then we need a little bit warm it up around, let's say, mild temperature, elevated temperature. It will start polymerization. Yeah, only this step is different.
Okay, and then this polymer you mentioned, like, because I mean, I guess some people maybe argue, like, is a polymer a solid? And it's not as liquid, right? But I think kind of like, so is this kind of in between, right? Like, and some say maybe ceramic only or this, but I think you say you get the best of both worlds, I assume, from this? Like, you still don't have a liquid, but you still have semi-solid? Or what's a polymer for you? Is it?
I think this really depends on the molecular weight, right? And for the liquid one, it has a small molecular weight. And for the polymer one, when let's say, the small molecule grow up with a higher molecular weight, it became solid. I think there is a very, very important concept differentiation is that people sometimes regard the polymer with the gel, but it's different. The gel is that you have the polymer chains, which is long. It entangles each other to form the three-dimensional voids. It tracks the solvents, the liquid inside. Therefore, when you heat it up, or let's say adjust its pH value, acidity or acidity, and then it will release the liquid. But for polymer, it's just soft. Yeah, when you heat it up, it's still, let's say, the solid, and it may be melt, but it's another story, right? But when there's no, let's say, small molecule to release from your system. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And then kind of a bit of market segmentation, right? Like, where do you think solid state will come first, or will be most important? Yeah, maybe if you could segment the market a bit for solid state.
Yeah, for the solid state battery, this is a new technology. And the new technology at the very beginning, and of course, without the scale, the price will be high. And also, I think the most distinctive part is about its performance. Yeah. For example, what we have here is that from our battery, and this is 65 ampere hour of the solid state battery. It has energy density of 315 watt hour per kilogram. And this battery and this pouch format realized no thermal propagation. In other words, that we put these two batteries next to each other, and in the middle, just with a very, very thin layer of the aerosol for the insulation. No further, let's say, heat management. We seal it in the modular. We heat up one of the cell until it goes to explosion, and the other cell was kept intact. Yeah, this is a very, very special, distinctive safety trick. The other one is that about this battery's performance, read performance, because as you can imagine that the lithium ions transport through the solid state, and therefore the ions could not go that fast. This is also the reason people regard sulfide as a very, very promising solid state technology, because sulfide transport lithium very fast. But in our case, and from our innovative, let's say, material design, we realized the 6C rate of the 100% DOD discharge. Yeah. And this cell could realize around 16 minutes to charge the cell from 10 to 80%. Yeah. So basically, this is very unique. Yeah. Of course, this comes with high cost. Yeah. Therefore, it will go to the high-end market. Take one example, for example, like the flying taxi, where it has very, very high standards for safety and also the requirements, demands for the energy density. And for the high, let's say, premium EV cars, and this is also something we will target from the beginning. And when this, the skills build up, and also, let's say, the deployment of more and more EVs, and the cost drives down, that will go to, let's say, the mass market.
Interesting. And maybe if you could compare now because you already had it showed there, like your solid state compared to other solid states.
Yeah, as I mentioned that for the, let's say, the organic and inorganic one, yeah. For the inorganic one, oxide and sulfide, in principle what happened, how it transports the lithium ion is that at elevated temperature for the oxide, or let's say with cold pressing process for the sulfide one, it forms inorganic structure. Yeah. There are crystalline structure, there are lots of voids. And basically it's like the mesh. You can understand it like the mesh. The lithium ions has very small in size. It can go through these voids. And in this way, this is how it transports the lithium ion. But the problem is that because it's inorganic, it's a rigid surface, and with the electrode, it's a rigid contact. And there are lots of interface issues. This is the reason why people add the electrolyte in order to mitigate this issue. And for the polymer ones, and the good thing is that at the working temperature of the polymers, and it's very soft, it can, let's say, address this interface issue very well, and we have very good contact. However, at its working temperature, this soft material polymer, it is lack of mechanical strength. It makes that the battery surface is not stable. It's like the dodge between the electrode. Therefore, when the battery gets compressed, and you could, let's say, squeeze the electrolyte out of your electrodes, and then it's internal shortcuts. It would lead to the battery failure. But in our technology, what we have, the uniqueness of our technology is that we introduced a rigid skeleton, and then this skeleton provides the stability of the cell. Yeah. And then we design the molecular structure. We introduce the soft part, which is the polymer, ion-conductive polymer part, and we do the in situ polymerization. And when we fill in, what we do is that we fill in the precursor of our polymer, and then we do the polymerization. In so doing that, it's like you have this electrolyte, the soft part, is growing from the electrode. Yeah. Therefore, by this way, you solve this interfacial contact issue very well. At the same time, you have the rigid skeleton. It provides the stability of the cell. Yeah, this is the uniqueness of our technology.
Interesting. And if I think about lithium metal anodes,
yes,
there also has been this approach, right, that you kind of get the lithium metal built up in the cell. So you have like first on your cathode, and then you bring it on the anode side. Is this also something you could do here as well, like add also lithium metal to that, or?
In fact, we have lithium metal, and for example, in our laboratory, we have reached, let's say, 4 generations of solid-state battery technology. The highest energy density from the laboratory, it goes to up to 700. Yeah, and with the lithium metal one, it's our 3rd generation one, and we reached the energy density between 400 to 500 watt-hour per kilogram. And this battery has been used on heavy load drones. The payload is 25 kilogram, and for that drones, and it can power the drone to fly for around 1 hour. But in the standard that battery, it only flies around 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes. Yeah, that is lithium metal. But the lithium metal's issue is that it's second life, and also lithium metal itself, and it's very sensitive to the moisture and oxygen. when it meets the moisture and oxygen, and it forms lithium hydride again. There are more lithium, and it's very dangerous. Yeah. But we have the technology in-house.
Interesting. And so because I think that's to my last question, kind of where are you right now on the progress and maybe what you see in the future. So just to understand the 4th generation, what do you use then as an anode or?
It's anode-less.
Anode-less, so that's.
Yes.
But then is it lithium metal in the end, or what's
no, lithium metal, there's no lithium metal even, yeah.
So what is the anode in the end?
It's not anode, it's just like the collectors, and then basically all the lithium ions comes from the cathode side, yeah.
But you have to bring it on the anode as well, right? Like you have to,
yes.
So it's building up on the anode?
No, you don't need to build up the anode. What happens is there that you have the lithium ions from the cathode, and then through, let's say, the charging process, and the lithium ions will go to the anode side. It's the anode-less, it's the collectors, and then it get electrons, and then to be reduced into the lithium atom. Basically, this is.
So it's lithium metal on the end, no?
It does not form the large batch of the metal, but it's kind of lithium atom. Yeah.
Okay. But like a thin layer of. But
a thin layer. You can connect in situ formation of the lithium metal.
Okay. Because that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, that makes sense. Because just to kind of put into perspective. So now you've done a lot of work. I can hear 4th generation already.
Yes.
So now you're working on probably the next generation already.
Yeah.
And
from research perspective. Yeah.
So kind of what's like the roadmap you see maybe for your own company and maybe also for people interested. Like what do you see to happen in solid state in the next couple of years, right? Like what do you think is the roadmap of you as well from the industry on solid state?
At least I can talk from our perspective. Currently, we are focusing on the mass production of these cells because you can see this is 65 ampere hour one, and this is ready for the commercial application. Yeah, and for example, in the past, what we have that our technology was mainly used in the demonstrative project at the bottom of marine trenches and under the water 10,000 meters more, and our battery powered the landers and continuously working there for 26 days. It broke the world record basically. Yeah, under the water it powered the AUV, autonomous underwater vehicles, and cruising there for 198 days. And on the ground, and also we validated its application in the EV and on the EV. And from the research project, and it finished more than 11,000 kilometers on road test. And in the air, as I mentioned just now, our 3rd generation of the battery-powered drones to fly. And in the next step, we are basically optimizing our technology into this kind of commercial available product and to serve for the different market. Of course, in our, let's say, research activity roadmap, as you mentioned, and we have, let's say, the lithium-metal batteries, which has energy density to 500. We have, let's say, the 4th generation one with anode-less and reaches to more than 600 watt-hour per kilogram. And these are, in our, let's say, the pipelines. Yeah.
Great. No, really exciting. And I appreciate you sharing your insights today, Chief, with us. And I mean, exciting journey as a startup. I know you're making a lot of progress there, and I think that's exciting to see. So I'm excited to see some updates for the next generations. And we want to thank all of you listeners as well today to listen into this podcast, again, to the Battery Insiders podcast. My name is Simon Engelke, founder and chair of Battery Associates. If you're interested for more of these kind of episodes, please make sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. Thanks again, everyone. Speak soon. Bye-bye.